Whoops, I accidentally hit the live button a little early. But hello and welcome to a Monday edition of Blind Eye Live. I am your host, Blind Eye himself, Hunter King, owner and proprietor of Blind Eye Media. And I'm excited to get the show started today. Something is shifted with my... Sorry, I'm having a issue where things that usually show up aren't showing up. Oh well, that won't be that big a deal. So, anyway, how's it going, everyone? I hope you're having a good day. Like I said, welcome to Blind Eye Live. We're gonna be talking some NBA news. Some stuff on the buyout market. I wanted to talk about the NBA's second half, because I consider the back half of the season after the trade deadline. We're going to be talking about my top 10 not corners, my top 10 linebackers for the draft, which we have some pretty big news on some of the corner prospects. Particularly Caleb Farley. Although I don't think what's going on is going to affect his draft status at all. We're going to get into that a little bit later. I also have, and we might get into some other stuff. I might talk a little bit about the NCAA tournament. Going into Elite Eight weekend and the Final Four, but we'll see if we get to that. So, in the aftermath of all the wheeling and dealing at the trade deadline, I think it would be a good idea. Well, and I guess I should get into the buyout stuff. Then I'll get into like my contenders maybe, or kind of where I see things kind of moving. We have, so the Brooklyn Nets were able to net. That was an unintended pun. Don't like that. LaMarcus Aldridge is with the Brooklyn Nets now after getting bought out by the Spurs. Which is huge because they already had picked up Blake Griffin off a buyout. Whether you believe he is washed or not, Blake Griffin against second units is a pretty, or could be pretty good. But his athleticism just seems to be next to nothing after the injuries he's picked up the last few years. I mean, after that All-Star and I think like third team All-NBA season he had with the Pistons a couple years ago, he dealt with injuries last year and had to shut it down, and he just doesn't seem like he has much vertical oomph anymore. But he's still a very skilled player. He's a very good playmaker. So he gives them some lineup options. Aldridge, I think, gives them more in that, no, he can't ball handle like Blake, but his game was never predicated really on athleticism. And he's a better option to soak up minutes at the 5 than Blake defensively, even if Aldridge isn't a very good defender necessarily. He's still taller and longer than Blake. Here comes my cat, waking up as soon as I'm doing something. So yeah. But I like Aldridge to the Nets just because, I mean, the Nets are a very talented team, and you added another talented offensive piece who gives you lineup flexibility. I don't know if he's going to be the main guy necessarily. But Yeah, and if anyone's wondering, no, I haven't gotten paler. I'm doing a different lighting setup. We'll see how that goes. I'll probably switch back to the other one tomorrow, but this light setup is easier on my eyes, so we'll see how that works. Might mess with it during the show, so we'll see. But yeah, so I'm really jazzed about what the Nets didn't do at the deadline, and then did do. Like, they didn't make some insane trade. They didn't ship out Bruce Brown like the Pistons did for no reason, for nothing. They didn't try too hard to get a center or some other piece. They just, small moves, sensible moves. The biggest issue, though, with them bringing in Griffin and then Aldridge is Nick Claxton has been really good for them recently. I really like what Nick Claxton brings to the table. At this point, he is the most... It's like he's more athletic than DeAndre Jordan at this point. Jordan's, losing his athleticism a bit. Claxton's probably their best all-around, or their best two-way big. And Claxton has some, ball handling, playmaking potential in him, too. So the more you let him play, and if anything, he can learn some things from Griffin. So that's good. But they do not need to cut Claxton's minutes necessarily for Aldridge and Griffin too much, because Claxton has been good for them. Sorry, I'm also a little stuffy. Claxton has been good for them. And I really like Claxton's development potential as a player. So they don't need to neuter that. But right now, you're looking at the Nets, depth right now. Beyond, and they're not even healthy right now, and they're still really, really good, fully healthy. KD will be back soon. But Kyrie, Harden, Durant, then you've got Joe Harris spotting up around. You've got Landry Shamet, who has been playing a little bit better of late, which is good, because he should be a solid rotation player for them if they let him. Bruce Brown has been awesome. He's been this weird bizarro big who's not big. He's a shooting guard size guy, or almost like a combo guard size guy. But offensively, he's basically functioning as their center. Screening hard. Diving to the rim hard. Catching the ball and making plays off the short roll because he is a guard. Playing really hard defense, against everybody. Bruce Brown's been a joy. He's been a really fun Swiss Army knife player, and probably the leading candidate to be MVP of the Luke Walton All-Stars this year. Shout out to Zach Lowe again. So, with that being said, I really think, I'm named off a couple. Then you've got you got DJ. Now LaMarcus, Blake Griffin, Nick Claxton. I named Shamet. So, the one thing that was a little interesting was there was apparently some buzz that Dinwiddie might get moved at the deadline for something. I'm not surprised that didn't happen, though. So, and then I forgot Jeff Green. Jeff Green's been playing great. They have a ton of lineup flexibility now because Green can play small forward. When KD's back, their team is going to be crazy. They're going to have a really interesting rotation and deep rotation for the playoffs. The Lakers bought or got Andre Drummond. Once he clears waivers, he's signing with the Lakers. So they have another center, which I don't know. We're gonna find out if Andre Drummond actually can move the needle or not. Which, I mean, he's a solid pickup for anybody because I don't necessarily think Drummond's like a negative player. I just don't know if he's a positive player. He's a slightly more impactful Hassan Whiteside because, for the most part, Hassan Whiteside has never really necessarily impacted winning, putting up numbers. You can argue Drummond didn't have talent around him at different times, or in Detroit, but I don't know if I buy that either because they were a borderline playoff team. And with the numbers he was putting up, you'd think team could be better. He's always wanted post touches, and he's not been good at posting up. But the Lakers will put him in an appropriate role, and that should help. But you would wonder. I know he's older, but would you rather have Marc Gasol on the court or Andre Drummond? Gasol is always going to make the right decision. Gasol can spread the floor. Gasol is a highly intelligent defender, not as athletic. Nowhere near as athletic as Drummond. But he's always in the right place. He's always been a great box-out artist. Some people have criticized him for not necessarily getting more boards over time, but he used to just wall off for Randolph and other players on the Grizzlies to get rebounds. So, teams always rebound better when Marc Gasol's on the court, historically speaking. Or, for the most part, historically speaking, Marc Gasol has improved your team's rebounding. Drummond has never actually improved his team's rebounding when he's on the court. He's really good at chasing boards. But he's in a number, or for his career, I want to say his teams have rebounded slightly better when he's off the court. Or at least in a number of seasons, his teams have rebounded better when Drummond was off the court than when he was on. There was some thought that putting him on a team with, or if he were to say go to Washington, there was like this idea of like, would the Wizards become the best rebounding team in the league between Drummond and Westbrook? And I don't think it would have been a great fit because if Drummond and Westbrook are both going after the rebound, who's boxing out for the team? But yeah, anyway. Not to get tracked into that hypothetical, but the Lakers adding Drummond is a boost for their team because it adds a starter level player to that roster. Albeit at a position, well, AD has been out, but I don't know. I'm not like a Drummond fan or a hater. I'm kind of like indifferent towards Drummond, so I don't necessarily know what the plan is there. Or, I mean, I get what the plan is there. I just don't know if it's, I don't know if it's going to matter or mean anything or do anything. Sorry, and I just realized I didn't have a backup drink, so I might have to bail out after my first, or after I finish this segment, go grab a drink or something. I will say, I have some, or before I continue, I do have some really cool stuff in the pipe, like, I'm about to get to work on doing, like, some music transitions and stuff for the show, and, I'm working on some backgrounds. I've got a filler little background here, but eventually, like, I'm going to have, like, all my social medias once I'm finished setting them all up and stuff listed over here for people to see. So, but hey, there's at least color I'm pointing the wrong direction. There's at least color over here for people watching. So, rather than just some empty blankness. Although I guess now it's just colored blankness. Whatever. So, those were the two like big buyout signings that I've seen so far. With that being said, I'm gonna, and I talked a lot about the trade deadline. I think your two favorites. Well, let me just list like I'm gonna power rank each conference right now, and I'm gonna start with the Western Conference. So up top, the Lakers are the champs, but I think y'all saw my cat briefly in the background. The Lakers are the defending champs, but they're not healthy right now. And while coming into the year, it seemed like they improved the roster, and I would say they did. If guys can't stay healthy, it doesn't really matter. So we'll see if like people are healthy by the time the playoffs come around. Utah has had the best record in the West for a while, but I just don't know if I believe in them yet. They have an extremely deep roster. And I love Donovan Mitchell, and he has shown growth this season. Rudy Gobert has been really, really good this year. Mike Conley has looked like Mike Conley again. Finally getting an injury replacement spot, but an all-star nod, which has long been deserved for him. And they have a lot of pieces around them. Joe Ingles, Royce O'Neal, Bojan Bogdanovic, Jordan Clarkson. But it's going to be hard for Utah to beat the Lakers when their best player is the third best player in the series. And maybe Gobert's the fourth. But is Schroeder right now really that much better than Jordan Clarkson? Maybe a little better defensively, but is Kyle Kuzma better than Bojan? In some ways, yes, but in terms of offense, no. And Bojan's an underrated defender anyway. I think we would all probably say that Dennis Schroeder is the third best player on the Lakers, but after him, like, you love Marc Gasol, and, you know, Montrezl Harrell is a solid player. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, but I don't know if I would take those guys over Ingles, Bojan. But I don't know. I mean, the Lakers are a deep team. And with Andre now, I mean, they're deeper up front than Utah. Well, Utah's got Derek Favors. Favors is good. But, I mean, I probably would still take the Lakers 7-game series. So, the Lakers are my number 1 right now. The Jazz are my number 2. The Clippers are just going to have to prove it. Like, the Kennard trade was so far, like, swapping out Shamet for Kennard has been a bust. They're not even playing Kennard. And if I'm not mistaken, they extended him upon, like, signing him, I think. Or, I mean, upon trading for him. Why not just trade? It's like, I would have rather sent Kennard to the Nets. Sent Kennard to the Nets. I would have. I'd rather have that 19th pick that Detroit got in that trade than have Kennard right now. I'd rather have Sadiq Bey than Kennard. Or I'd rather have Peyton Pritchard than Kennard right now. Pritchard would help a lot of things. And I think the Clippers got... I think personally the Clippers got worse trading Lou Williams for Rajon Rondo, or didn't get any better at all. Maybe Rondo's a little better defensively, and you can talk about playoff Rondo all you want. But you paid 2 second-round picks in Lou Williams for Rajon Rondo. I don't like the trade. And Rondo's not necessarily been healthy this year. And some of the playoff Rondo stuff gets a little overblown anyway. So, I mean, there's a reason memes exist, but I think this one is one that's going to, every year is going to be more and more of a fake, like a false narrative. With that being said, I don't have the Clippers at number 3. I have the Nuggets at number 3 and the Clippers at 4. I really think the Nuggets improved a lot at the deadline. Aaron Gordon gives them the thing that they needed the most. A strong, athletic wing who can defend the LeBrons, Kawhis, and Kevin Durant's of the world. They needed that guy. And Gordon is better than that. Or is at least as good at that as Jeremy Grant, and I think he might be a little better at that than Jeremy Grant. He's more athletic than Jeremy Grant. And he's a little more versatile. Jeremy Grant's shown to be like a 20-point per game scorer, so he's growing as a player. But I don't think I would say Aaron Gordon's a better player. And in a better team situation, I think Gordon being pushed into his strengths, which is not what Orlando's been doing with him, because they've been trying to stretch him into things he's not. And he envisions himself as a LeBron type, big wing, pick and roll player. And he's not. Against mostly second units this year, he's run a lot of pick and roll stuff with Orlando's bench units. And those possessions have averaged 0.89 points per 100 possessions. I believe was the number I saw. Against second units. Against teams, backups. That's not encouraging. So, now you put him in a better scenario in Denver where he's running them less, but running them with better players. Those numbers potentially go up. And he's been shooting really good on spot up threes this year. And for the season as a whole, he's shooting 37.5% from 3 overall, which is really good. And if you insert him into what I believe their starting 5 will be, which is Jamal Murray, Will Barton, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, Nikola Jokic, he's their 5th best shooter, but he's shooting 37.5% from 3. Now, I don't know. Murray had some kind of crappy numbers from 3 early in the season. I don't know if he's above 37.5%, but he's shooting harder degree of difficulty shots on average. Um, and Gordon as a screener is can be devastating with Murray and Jokic. Some of these run some inverted pick and roll actions with Jokic and Gordon. And with Gordon's ability, or his explosive leaping ability, like him as a cutter around Jokic is going to be a danger to defenses. And then he helps fix one of the snags with their team construction for how to fit Michael Porter Jr. in that offensively, Gordon can screen set for any of the other guys or spot up in the corner. But defensively, you could put Michael Porter Jr. on the weakest offensive threat for the other team on the wing, or at least at the forward spots, which is a big win for Denver. Not that Porter Jr. can't play defense, like he's long, he's got a high IQ, but he's still thin. He's not a great positional defender, whatever. He has tools, but he's still learning how to use them. And Michael Malone is a great coach, and I feel like he can get more out of Aaron Gordon. Michael Malone is able to get more out of players than a lot of other coaches. That's why he's been around as long as he has. That's why the Nuggets hired him after Sacramento fired him. Stupidly fired him. So, I like Denver. I think Denver has a chance. And they've been playing really well lately, and their point differential is like plus 4.6 this season anyway, before this trade, which is really good. It actually, based on their point differential, their record should be better. The only reason it isn't is because... And we're back. Yeah, sorry, my stream just blipped. Uh-oh. Something just happened. Okay. Okay, that's fixed. So, anyway, as I was saying, the Nuggets are a deep team now. Or, they're deep with front court players, and they're deep with guards. But Gordon helped them because they really needed a bigger wing than what they had. Like, Gary Harris was arguably their best perimeter defender. And he's still undersized to check, like, bigger wings. And the Nuggets also got Gary Clark, who's another wing, who will help at the small forward position, like, into the rotation role. But the Nuggets like to play like 3 guard lineups, basically. They're comfortable playing Will Barton at the 3 for stretches. But this gives them way more lineup flexibility. This probably this should cut a little bit into Paul Millsap and J. Michael Green's minutes, which will be good. One, because Millsap probably should only be playing like, I don't even know if he should be playing 25 minutes a game at this point. Like, maybe every now and again, depending on matchups, but you want to keep him under 25 and maybe to down around like 18 to 20 minutes a game. You can definitely do that now. Although I'm going to say he's going to stay somewhere around like 22 to 24. I don't know. I'll have to look at some of their numbers or what his minutes have been like this year. And it'll cut into J. Michael Green's minutes for sure. Maybe it's like, and JaVale McGee coming in that trade. Also, the Nuggets now have a rim running, rim protecting backup center who gives them a little bit of a different look than, or a very different look than having Jokic at center, which will also cut into Green's minutes. So, and we'll probably see less of like the Murray, Morris, Dozier lineup that we were getting a decent amount, where they were playing all three of those guards. And I think and come the playoffs, that's probably a good thing. You probably don't want to see that too terribly much. So after the Nuggets, I have the Clippers. The Clippers have top-end talent. If they get if playoff Rondo does show up, like, that's a big boom for them. But it's kind of crazy. They gave up 2 second-round picks and Lou Williams for Rondo. They've got to get more out of Kennard. I don't know what they've done to him. Not that Kennard's been great, but he showed a lot of improvement with the Pistons last year. And he should be useful. It's like if they were getting the Kennard they traded for and then paid for, then losing Lou Williams wouldn't be that big of a deal. Or trading away Lou Williams wouldn't even be that big of a, factor. But alas, he's not. I mean, they're paying him, what was it, $16 million a year? $15 million a year? And they're barely even playing him now. You should. I mean, at that point, don't even make the trade. Just keep Shamet, or just trade Shamet straight up for the 19th pick from Detroit, or from Brooklyn. Don't even involve Detroit. Just get a rookie who's cheaper, but at this point, the Clippers are going to Clippers. Doesn't matter who's in charge. But they're still number 4. And after that, it gets kind of tough out west. Or, I say they're number 4. That's subject to change. And I'm probably a little too low on the Suns now. Cause I've got the Suns at 5, but it's real close there. I just think Kawhi and Paul George are they're too good combined to not have them in the top, like the top half of the top 4. But the Suns are right there, and I really believe they've got a really good team and could be kind of like a Miami Heat type that just better than the sum of their parts. You get the all-star, all-NBA level player who had the kind of, he's really good, but you're not getting to the promised land with him like Jimmy Butler was last year. And you also have the young, up-and-coming former Kentucky Wildcat, Devin Booker instead of Bam Adebayo. You have some really good young, like, developmental players, or in-house developed players like Michael Bridges, Cameron Johnson, to fill out around. And of course you got DeAndre Ayton there, who in interviews, like, people were kind of like, this guy was a number 1 pick. It's like, well, one, this is why you probably shouldn't pick a center with the first overall pick anyway. It should have been Luka, regardless of fit or whatever. But Ayton is playing really well for center. He is focusing on the little things. He's playing defense. He's not trying to, instead of being an Andre Drummond or Dwight Howard, he's not whining for post-ups or whatever. He's doing what the team asks and trying to do all of that as well as he can and get better at doing those things. That's really respectable. That's the kind of player I want on my team. he realizes he's the third wheel here. This is Chris Paul and Devin Booker's show, and he needs to work around that. Michael Bridges is really good, and I could see him come playoff time being a big factor. Moving forward, he's one of the top 3-and-D type wings, and I could see him. He still has growth potential. I could see him developing into a more athletic Chris Middleton type. Like he has some dribble game, some off the dribble game. He can run the pick and roll and make decisions. He's a really good outside shooter. He's got a really good build. And he's a better defender. Or at least he has better physical tools than Chris Middleton. Like he's more athletic. I think he's a better one-on-one defender, and I think he'll definitely turn into a better team defender if he's not already. Cameron Johnson's a really great shooter who has really improved his defense since getting into the league, and everyone who's eschewed how high he was picked, I get it, but the Suns targeted a guy, and that guy is becoming what they need him to be and what they're asking him to be. And at the end of the day, that's way more important than getting the highest upside player at a given pick. And everybody has untapped upside. There are some guys who just, they physically mature later than other people, or they focus on other things other than their body. They get the skills down, then they focus on their body. They get into an NBA training program, and they become more explosive. They become quicker, and it elevates their skills, and they develop. There's a lot that we take for granted and the whole age thing with Cameron Johnson. Yeah, I prefer to draft younger guys, but Johnson has been a good pickup for the Suns. So I don't have a problem with the Suns. And you can, I would say the one big thing is everyone's arguing about the Jalen Smith pick still. Like, y'all could have drafted Tyrese Halliburton, and yes, they should have. Although I like Jalen Smith, I still like him as a prospect. And he's kind of, I get taking the swing on the guy who could be the perfect modern big, who can protect the rim, rebound, and space the floor vertically and from the three-point line, vertically and horizontally. He spent more time in the G League than with the actual team this year, but I'm still bullish on that guy long term. And the Suns weren't necessarily thinking about just this year, I don't think, with that pick. Because if you were thinking just about this year, you would have taken Tyrese Halliburton. You would have taken maybe even taken like a Devin Vassell or a Sadiq Bey. Although I personally thought they were going to take Sadiq. I had Sadiq Bey going there at 11 because I didn't think Halliburton would even be on the board at that point. How about the Kings getting a steal? But the Suns have a great team. They've got, I love Javon Carter there, what he's provided them. His improved three-point shooting and his defense, like, great rotation guard. Still wish Elio Okobo, which he's still really young. Like, I hope he turns into something. He has, like, some really intriguing skills as a point guard. Sarge is solid. But yeah, I guess I just have the Suns 5th because I'd rather have Kawhi Leonard and Paul George than Paul and Booker for my top two guys on my team. And it just gets murkier and murkier as you go down. Like, especially after the top five, because the top five are pretty obvious to me. After that, you've got, like, this morass of teams. Portland, Dallas, Portland, Dallas, Golden State, Memphis, Sacramento, and man, what Sacramento could do if they would get rid of Luke Walton. I mean, for real. Like, they had a better coach. Because I mean, this play-in group is ridiculously tough. And I mean, Oklahoma City is still, or is like in that mix too. Really, right now the only two teams that are like dead out of the playoffs are Minnesota and Houston. Because for anyone who's not aware, like the NBA's doing a new play-in thing for the last 4 spots, or goodness, I'm yawning and I don't know why. Slept well last night. So the NBA play-in tournament this year, or what they're doing for the NBA playoffs, slot or spots 1 through 6, or seeds 1 through 6 in each conference are locked in. And then what they're doing is they're having 7, 8, 9, and 10 seeds play for the final 2 spots in each conference. So, and I think that's incentivized some team or more teams to hold on to players or buy this year. That's why Chicago went all in because they're like, well, we were right in that range anyway, but let's improve our team and let's see what we can do here. We have so many young pieces. Let's take a couple and turn them into veterans, namely Nikola Vucic. Oh my goodness, how am I messing his name up? Because I love him. Nikola Vucevic, good old Vooch. And they're going to make a run. I'll get into the Eastern Conference later. Sorry. So, number 6, at number 6, I have the Trailblazers just because Dame Lillard is ridiculous. He's so good. He is so dang good. CJ McCollum is working his way back. The Norman Powell trade. Norman Powell been the 3rd best 3-point shooter in the league this year by percentage. He doesn't give you a ton of playmaking, but he's got playoff experience. He's been a key member of a title-winning team. And as a starter, once Toronto promoted him, he started 31 of 42 games. Over his 31 starts, he's averaging 22.8 or 22.6 points per game. For the season, I think he's at 19.4 or 19.6. As much as I hate them trading Gary Trent, because I talked about this on Thursday, I've done some more looking into this. Powell's a more seasoned player. He's a better defender, like team defender at this stage. He's a little shorter than Trent, but he's really long for a guy who's 6'3". I think he's got like a 6'10" wingspan. He's really thickly built, and for the most part this season, he has spent easily the majority of his time, the vast majority of his time on the court guarding small forwards on defense. So he's capable of doing that. The biggest thing is they were also able to get out of Rodney Hood's contract. And I thought, it's like, this is what I learned. Rodney Hood has actually been pretty bad this year in that in ESPN's Real Plus Minus, which Real Plus Minus is not an end-all be-all stat, but it is a good indicator, or at least a good jumping in point in analyzing a player's effectiveness on the court. Rodney Hood ranks last in ESPN's Real Plus Minus at negative 6.6 points per 100 possessions. I think it's a per 100 stat. If not, he's just a negative 6.6. Real Plus Minus is a regression formula in which that means the formula is based to average out to 0. So like league average would be a 0. You have to be really good or really bad to get that far away from 0. And according to ESPN's Roll Plus Minus, he's been really bad. So getting out of getting him off the team and over to another team to deal with, the second year of his contract, although it isn't guaranteed, that was probably a solid move. Turning him and Trent into Powell, into Norm Powell and a free roster space, which they could use on a bout player or promoting a guy from their G League affiliate or whatever. Who would have to be better than Rodney Hood has been playing. But I'd still put Portland at 6 because Lillard's ridiculous. Nurkic, when he's healthy, is a really impactful two-way center. Melo's been good this year. Covington is a beast of a, wing defender, historically. Makes smart plays. I just like their roster. And once you get to the playoffs, more Dame. When he's healthy, more CJ. More of those guys, so. And if Norman Powell is playing as like you can either run him as your 5th starter and have Covington at the 4, or you can have him play as your number 1 option off the bench. The one interesting thing about Powell, though, is out of players averaging the number of points that he's averaging per game or more, he's one of only 3 of players averaging 19 or more points a game to average 2 or fewer assists, or maybe it's less than 2 assists. The other 2 are Kristaps Porzingis and Christian Wood, who are both centers. So he doesn't really provide you much by way of playmaking. So that's something interesting. But when you've got Lillard and McCollum healthy, and another thing is, here's hoping this opens up more time for Anthony Simons. Powell's lack of playmaking won't be as big a deal. So, at 7, we've got. I'm gonna go with the Mavericks because of Luka, and I like them adding Redick and, to a way lesser extent, Melly, but I like them adding Redick to the team, getting a top of the line shooter whenever he gets back healthy. Once again, another guy. He had to have like some kind of, I think it was a non-surgical procedure on something, or some kind of minor procedure on something that's had him out for most of the month. But through like the tail end of January through March 3rd when he went out, he was shooting like the lights out again. He was like 46% from three, I think, over that like month-long span, or a little more than a month. So that should help them offensively and give them a little more lineup flexibility on the wing. Number 8, I'm probably actually going to put San Antonio. I think kicking Aldridge to the curb, people can say, well, is that helping them? It's like, it's helping them long term when it comes to development, but I think they're finally realizing that just going with the young guys helps their defense, and it's going to bump up the offensive roles of all these guys. It's going to help their development. Maybe it hurts their chances to make the playoffs, but I don't think so. I think having Pirtle as the starting center and running DeMar DeRozan at the 4 a lot. Like, DeRozan's been really good this year. Maybe playing the best basketball of his career this season, especially as a playmaker. I like their young roster, and there's just something about their team that I'd put them ahead of Memphis right now, and the other team's kind of in this morass. I'm going to put Memphis at 9. I want to put my Grizzlies, ahead of the Spurs, but I just feel like they've got a little more established talent than we do. Like, Jaren Jackson Jr. is still hurt, and he's supposed to come back at the end of April. So we'll see. But I love our team. We're super deep, but I really kind of wish we had tried to package some of our guys for something, either some future pick or a better, or like a young-ish veteran, like mid-20s kind of guy who could improve the team. Like, if we could have patched together something like Dylan, but is anyone really going to be enticed by like Dylan Brooks plus? My goodness, I don't even feel sleepy. I don't know why I'm yawning. Why would people be enticed by Dylan Brooks and I guess Dylan Brooks, like we're or Gorgie Ding, who's been shooting the lights out and blocking a lot of shots and playing really good as he was like our backup center, he was playing a lot of center minutes when Valanciunas was out, and he was playing really well. But with Jackson coming back soon, as good as Tillman is with Valanciunas healthy, like Ding's not a part of our future. So, and obviously we're not moving Bane, we're not moving Tillman, we're not moving Morant or Clark. It might have been interesting to see what we could get from Valanciunas, but I don't think there was necessarily like a big market out there for him, and we probably should, unless we get like a really, really good offer, we shouldn't even get rid of him anyway because he's been really good for us. And it's Winslow's showing flashes, but I'm not super. The thing is, we've got to improve the wing. Like, my thing is I wanted to improve over Brooks. I wanted to package Brooks in something or some things to see if we could get something better. But I like the team sticking with the developmental approach. Brooks is on a multi-year deal. We could always see, in the offseason. But we're just so deep in, like, quality players who can play and play together. We're really just banking on. It's like we'll see if Jaren Jackson could ever get healthy and stay healthy and stay on the court. Maybe we'll see what we can. Maybe we'll start to see what we can really do, because I think it'll also help Morant's development to play with him and Clark, both on the court and the front court at the same time, because of the spacing, the athleticism. We'll see. And Jackson needs to be on the court to develop skills and his mind. So after that, I got Sacto. Sacto has as good a, like, with De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox is more developed than Morant at this point, and I'd take him over any of the Spurs guards. Love Halliburton. Barnes is a really good wing. Rashawn Holmes has been really good. Buddy Hield's a elite shooter. Like, they're really good too. I don't see how they're not. I don't see how they're not in the play-in tournament or part of the playoffs by the end of things. And I guess at 10, man, I feel like I'm missing like a notable team somewhere in here. Let's go through like Western Conference divisions. Man, I'm a nerd. Oh, New Orleans. I forgot about New Orleans. Actually, I'm going to move New Orleans up. I feel really dumb forgetting about the Pelicans. Because I'd probably put them ahead of the Spurs. Just because Point Zion's been insane. Brandon Ingram's great. And they have a lot of talent there. And the deal, they got James Johnson and Wes Iwundu and a second-round pick during the J.J. Redick deal. Johnson can play some good defense. Like, he could be an interesting, like, front court, like, matchup piece. But really, this is just going to give more minutes to, like, young guards and Nickel Alexander-Walker and Kira Lewis, who I think both have really good potential, especially Kira Lewis. Who is just, he's super fast. Like, he's a really speedy player. So I'd probably move them actually into 8th behind who to have. Portland at 6 and Dallas at 7. I'd put New Orleans at 8. Then the Spurs 9, Grizzlies 10, and then Sacto 11. Honestly, I actually might put Sacto 10 and the Grizzlies 11. One of those teams isn't going to make it. Obviously. And part of me kind of wants it to be my Grizzlies, because I'd kind of like to see us slide a little bit towards the end of the season. Just really focusing on playing the young guys. But our young guys are so good. I want us to be in position to get like a really, really good young prospect, like, who has great upside to pair with our young group. If not, I want to get Cody Kispert. Not that Kispert doesn't have upside, but Kispert would provide shooting on the wing and just a really steady player. And I think he could definitely upgrade on Dylan Brooks. But, man, I'd love to see, like, the Volunteers, like Keon Johnson with his athleticism. He has dynamic upside, and he kind of came later to the game than a lot of players. He's really athletic. I think he'd be really interesting next to Morant, although, questions about his jumper long term. Like, he's going to have to develop that, or like the 3-point shot more. A guy like Jalen Green, who's in the G League, would be interesting. Jonathan Kuminga would be interesting. But is he better at the 4, or can he legit play 3 long term? Because if he could, that would be a beast of a move. But, those 3 guys probably are going to go top 5, definitely top 7. And I don't think the Grizzlies are going to... The Grizzlies would have to get close, or would have to end up finishing with probably the 11th worst record in the league to potentially move up into the top 7 to get them. Because, you're probably not moving up from 14 or 13. And really, if you're not in the top 10, it's hard to move up, period. So, and I don't mean to the top spot. I just mean, move up the board at all. Move into, the middle of the lottery. Because this draft is deep, and there are guys in the middle lottery that are going to be really good. And, some guys in the late lottery that are going to be interesting, too. This is a deep draft. But... And I tell you, it's going to be an interesting choice because the top 3 players are Cade Cunningham, Evan Mobley, and Jalen Suggs for me. And I really love Jalen Suggs. Really love Jalen Suggs. To me, he's like a young Derrick Rose without with a better jump shot. I think he's a more polished Derrick Rose. Someone's really gonna enjoy getting or adding him to their team long term. With that being said, then you've got, after the Grizzlies, you've got OKC. At 12. Oh, I totally didn't say the Warriors. That's the team. Man, I knew that. I'm like, man, I feel like I'm missing someone. I missed the Warriors. I missed the Warriors and the Pelicans. What an idiot I am. Because Curry's been playing lights out. And Wiggins is playing great. Man. So maybe the Warriors are my 8th team. Yeah, because Curry's the best player out of all the teams that I've got after Dallas. For sure. So that puts the Pelicans at 9. And the Spurs at 10. Sac to 11, Grizzlies 12, OKC 13. And then that leaves you with Minnie at 14 and Houston at 15 in the rankings out west. For the East, this is going to be quicker because I want to get off the NBA stuff. Well, I say quicker. So, out East, I would say Brooklyn is easily the number 1 team, and they're not even healthy right now. But come the playoffs, the Nets are going to be a legit Death Star. Their offense is a Death Star. They just have to play solid enough defense. And we've seen in the playoffs Irving ramp up his defense to solid levels. Maybe even, and for stretches, even above average levels. He wants to play good defense. Or should I say, when he wants to play good defense. But in those important situations, it seems like he wants to play good defense. He does lock in. We'll see if Harden can. Harden's always been actually a pretty good post defender. Actually a really good one. And he's got a good IQ when he's not being dumb. But sometimes he's lazy. He and Westbrook have some very interesting similar habits in that regard. Durant can ramp up his defense to an elite level, and I think he still can. Even it's because he seems like he just looks like he's totally fully back from that Achilles injury. So he can be a great defender. DeAndre Jordan should be a solid defender. He's a solid rim protector. Nick Claxton looks like he has the tools to be an above average one, an above average rim protector and defender. He's switchable. Brown is a great defensive player. Harris plays solid team defense. Jeff Green, multi-positional, versatile defender. They have pieces to be like a good enough defense for their ridiculous offense. After that, I've got the Sixers as my second team because Embiid has been ridiculous. When he's back healthy, like Embiid was playing like the MVP of the league this year. And Ben Simmons has been, since we ticked over to 2021, Simmons' scoring has really picked up. I think Simmons is growing as a player. Still doesn't have the jump shot, but they have built this team in a way around him to where it's not as big a deal. And they have shooting, like you've got Seth Curry, Danny Green, Tyrese Maxey can make shots. He's still a little inconsistent as a rookie, but I like Maxey a lot. Thibel's an elite defender, and his jumper, actually, he's shown improvement with his jumper. Adding George Hill at the deadline was a really big deal for them. So all they really gave up was Terrence Ferguson and some meaningless second-round picks. I say meaningless, but like second-round picks. Like Hill can shoot. Hill can, be the veteran. Like be a veteran point guard, and run the show some. Like he can this year. There's a blip there. But I don't know. After those guys, like Lopez, the last couple years, his 3-point shooting has tanked. He's still shooting them, and he's still a really great deterrent and defender around the rim. And he has that post game, but I don't know. Adding PJ Tucker was a big deal for them. But I still feel like PJ is close to washed because he was not looking good in Houston. You could say it was a bad team. He'll fire it up. Maybe he does. But him firing it up still might not be as good as it was. Probably won't be, if we're being honest. I like Dante DiVincenzo. But I don't know. I don't think the Bucks are a championship team this year. I don't think they got better this year than they were last year. And last year they weren't good enough to even get to the finals. Like, they were flawed. That doesn't mean things are over for them, because I think they have paths to getting better. I can't remember, but I think they drafted Malachi Flynn. Or no. Raptors, I think, drafted Malachi Flynn with maybe their pick or something. But the Bucks are going to have to get creative, and they're going to have to nail developing some players. I think they drafted Jordan Nwora in the second round, which I really liked. DiVincenzo has improvements still to be made. Like, he's still a growing player, and I like him long term for them. But they've got to figure out they're going to have to figure out how to work around Giannis not having a jump shot and not being like an elite shot maker late in the shot clock and in clutch situations. Like, yeah, he can get to the basket, but a lot of teams just wall off and make the rest of the team beat him can Holiday and Middleton hit those shots? I think they need to lean more on Middleton. Because Middleton's efficiency numbers historically have not dropped as his scoring burden has increased. So I'm a big, like, legit believe in, like, Chris Middleton, but the Bucks have to prove it. They have to prove it. So they're number 3 for me right now. Miami is my number 4 team in the East. I love getting Oladipo for basically nothing. Yes, Kelly Olynyk's a starting power forward, but Oladipo at like 75%, 70% of what he was is probably just as valuable as as Olynyk. If they can get him back to close, and he's shown flashes. He's had games of being, pre-injury Victor Oladipo. That launches Miami's ceiling like sky high, because Jimmy's back to being Jimmy. Bam is awesome. They have a proto Bam, or maybe not proto. I don't know. They have like a second Bam in development in Precious Achiuwa, particularly defensively. Behind Bam, they brought in Trevor Ariza like a week before the deadline, or in the week before the deadline. They were able to keep Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson. They still have Iguodala there. You've got Nunn and Dragic there. The Heat are deep and talented. And if Oladipo can get to all-star level himself, not necessarily like all-NBA level himself, but all-star level him, dude, they've got a really good team and a really versatile team. And they added Nemanja Bjelica. Or Nemanja Bjelica. There we go. That's how you say his name. Who is a big with, who pretty good rebounder and can stretch the floor, like is a really good floor spacer. So I like Miami. After that, like, the East there's a lot of capable teams. I don't know what's going on in Boston. Hopefully they figure things out from here on out. Evan Fournier helps. They moved Theus, and that basically signals that Tristan Thompson and Robert Williams are getting all the center minutes. Which Thompson, I'm pretty meh about, but Williams has just so much upside, and they just need to just have him sink or swim and just decide whether he develops or not this year. They need to give him the opportunity to just play through mistakes, whatever. He helps the ceiling of this team, even if he maybe lowers the floor. The Raptors decided they made some space on their bench. They've got like an open roster spot now or they might have 2 for like either buyout guys or guys they can promote from their G League team. Raptors 905. So we'll see what they do, but I don't think they lose that much giving Powell's minutes to Trent. Maybe they can help Hood rehab and maybe get better, because the Raptors take, their second units are where the misfit toys go to become, fun pieces or, solid contributors. Like, they've, turned Stanley Johnson into something. Like, he's playing real minutes for them. Chris Boucher is really good for them. So I'd probably put the Raptors 5 and the Celtics 6. Even though the Celtics are like, I think 21-23 the last time I checked. They have too much talent for me to drop them any further. I'm going to put Chicago, or I'm going to put, they both have dealt with injuries. I'm going to put Chicago at 7 because I think Vooch is really going to help them, especially offensively. He's going to make playmaking reads easier for LaVine, and he's going to open up more space for LaVine to operate, and that's going to help. And there's going to be even more definition of roles with Wendell Carter out of the way. Markkanen's going to be playing mostly the 4. They have Theus there now to be kind of like their backup 5, which Theus is pretty overqualified for. They brought in young playmaking forward Troy Brown, which in bench units with Kobe White, who's definitely more of a scorer type player. Not that Kobe White might or won't start next to LaVine, but in different lineup combinations, Brown could be interesting as more of a playmaking type wing. Considering Theus can stretch the floor some, you put him on the floor with him or Markkanen, White, whatever, just different combinations. Like, he's a good playmaker, and he's a solid defender. Athletic guy, long guy. I still like his potential. I like them flipping Hutchison for him in that trade. Like, they flipped Gafford and Hutchison for Wagner and Brown. And, I mean, I like Gafford. I still think they kind of needed a guy like Gafford on the team, but, they didn't use Wagner in the trade that got them Theus. And they got Javonte Green out of it, which I really like. It's like the Bulls really, I just like, maybe you hate seeing them send 2 top 4 protected first round picks for Nikola Vucevic, but I think they needed to do something, and I think they have improved that team in the short term, like for the next few years. Because I don't necessarily see Vooch slipping that much from the player he is now, because he's so skill-based anyway. Like, as he gets into his 30s. I mean, Marc Gasol has aged rather gracefully, and Vooch has had, I think, less wear and tear, and I think he's had, like, less injuries than Marc Gasol has. So, like, Vooch is going to age well. Now, Vooch is nowhere near as good defensively as Mark, but I think that's solidly enough to put the Bulls at 7. I'll put the Pacers at 8. I really like the Pacers. Once they get healthy, they'll probably end up moving up these rankings, but they've kind of skidded. But once LeVert's back and in a groove, I like, and, TJ Warren, a 5-man starting lineup of Brogdon, LeVert, Warren, Sabonis, and Turner is a really nice sounding 5-man group. And they still have TJ McConnell, one of the best backup point guards in the league, one of the headiest passing lane players and cagiest ball snatchers, steals guys in the league as their backup point guard. And he's a really cagey playmaker, has a great mid-range game. You have Aaron Holiday. You have Justin Holiday. You have Doug McDermott. I like Goga Badatse as a young backup center who is a really good shot swatter around the rim protector. Fouls a little bit more than you'd like per 30 but he's a young center, that happens. And he has a nice looking jumper. It's not consistent yet, but he shows floor space potential. I like Badatse. They have a really interesting 11 deep roster in Indiana. And after that, you've got Atlanta, who Atlanta talent-wise is as good as, or on paper talent-wise, is better than half the teams I have listed ahead of them. It just hasn't worked out because of people being injured and just Lloyd Pierce wasn't getting the job done. It certainly seems like Nate McMillan is getting more out of this team. And they've been pretty good since Nate McMillan has taken over as head coach. So they're likely to move up these standings or my power rankings too. Trae Young is an elite offensive talent, although he still needs to up his 3-point percentage. He's not Curry or Lillard in terms of shooting. But he's probably better than both as a playmaker, although I don't know if he's better than Curry. They don't ask Curry to do quite as much of that as Young always has the ball in his hands. But he's so bad defensively. And maybe bringing Lou Williams back to the ATL will help their bench offense. The offense when Trey's not in the game. Oh, I'm sorry, I got something in my throat. There's a button on here I can hit that'll mute this. At least there was. There we go. Did that not mute it? Huh. That's weird, because usually that mutes that. Oh well. Sorry for coughing in y'all's ears. Anyway. After Atlanta, I've got the Knicks at 10. The Knicks have been solid, but I feel like there's a fall off at some point. Because I like a lot of their young players. Randall's been playing the best basketball of his career. Julius Randle has been awesome. He deserved that All-Star nod. Emmanuel Quickley has been a revelation for them. He was one of my favorite sleepers in the draft, and honestly, from what I was seeing, I was kind of shocked he went in the first round. Although I thought he was worth the pick, and he has shown he's been every bit worth it for New York. RJ Barrett still has a lot of room to improve. He's not he's just a young, growing player. Hopefully, as they continue to build this team, he's able to maximize his ceiling. But there were some of the questions that I had for him coming into the league, and why I thought it was pretty obvious that he wasn't in the same tier as Williamson or Ja have been apparent. His jumper's still just his jumpers. I don't know if it. Man, I'm having questions on whether he's ever going to be a consistently average 3-point shooter. And he's kind of, to me, looking like the next Evan Turner. It's not a bad player, but is he helping you win a championship? Or make a deep run into the playoffs? Really? He's probably going to be better than Evan Turner. I just mean, right now, that's kind of what he is. And I love Mitchell Robinson. And I know Knicks fans were kind of upset that they didn't do anything at the deadline to improve their team. They weren't going to do anything to improve their team this year that wasn't going to just look completely stupid and irresponsible before the end of the season, let alone next season and 2 years from now. You know, Knicks fans complain about bad management and, them, rushing things. But then as soon as the Knicks seem slightly competent, all right, now it's time to make moves. And it's like, no, you idiots. You're wanting them to do exactly what they've done for decades. Shut up and be patient. Just chill for a minute. And right now, the Knicks are still probably going to be a play-in, or could be in the play-in, range. I mean, they're in the play-in range. And heck, I mean, they might even be the last. I wouldn't be surprised if the Knicks ended up actually finishing like even as high as like 6th. So beyond that, because I had Charlotte's dropping because LaMelo Ball just made that team so much better. Yeah, they were able to bring in Brad Wanamaker, but I don't think this team is going to... They've got Hayward. Sellers a capable player. Like, they have... P.J. Washington's good, Miles Bridges, but... Terry Rozier's been awesome, but I don't know if they have... If they get in to the play-ins, it's probably going to be as the 9th or 10th team, maybe. Like, I think losing Ball for the rest of the season really hurts them. And that sucks, because LaMelo Ball has been one of the most fun and entertaining players to watch this year. He's helped make Charlotte one of the most fun and interesting teams to watch. But who knows? Malik Monk could keep stepping up. Devontae Graham could, bounce back. Guys could potentially continue to thrive with larger roles than they had before, but I feel like a lot of these guys were playing so well because they were getting to play with LaMelo Ball. So they've dropped. Let me kind of go through my list, make sure I've got my rankings. Nets. So Nets. Blanking. Oh yeah. So Nets, Sixers, Bucks, Heat, Toronto, Boston, Chicago, Indy, the Hawks, the Knicks, the Hornets. And that leaves you with the Wizards in 12th. Although, yeah. The Cavs 13, the Magic 14, and the Pistons 15. Actually, the Magic might even move further down. They might be 15 rather than the Pistons now. I don't know. They're down around that same area. It's like really we're talking about teams that I just don't think are making the playoffs or making even the play-in. Washington might, and they might end up jumping a couple of these teams. We'll see how things pan out, but for sure the Cavs, the Pistons, and the Magic aren't making the playoffs. That's for dang sure. So that's it, and really you've got like the race for the title. I think you've got. I really think you've got 5 legit contenders. I was higher on the Trailblazers earlier on, but or like coming into the year, but I think the Lakers, the Nuggets, the Jazz, Clippers, and Suns are your 5 contenders out west. And in the East, it's the Nets, the Sixers, the Bucks, and the Heat. If Oladipo, come the playoffs, is back to being close to what he was. And that's the only way that they're a contender. So, anyway, so that's enough NBA. I went an hour and a half on NBA stuff there. That was probably really dry for all you. Let's see. I'm gonna go run and grab something to drink. If you're listening right now, if you want me to answer any questions, drop a comment in the chat, and I'll answer questions if there are anyone I get back. If not, I'm going to go into my top 10 corners for the NFL draft, or top 10 linebackers for the NFL draft. So it's like off-ball linebackers, like your Levante Davids, Ray Lewis's of the world. So, I will be right back. Alright, and we are back. Or I guess I am back. So, no questions, so I will get into my top linebackers for the NFL draft. So, oh, that's good. So, for starters, I'm gonna, and maybe this is something which I think I talked a little bit or more about, like what I look for in quarterbacks more than anything else. And I'm gonna start kind of diving, maybe from now on when I talk about different position groups specifically, I'll talk about like the things that I'm really looking for, and when I'm evaluating or what I like or what traits I'm looking for in different players. Some positions I'm much better at evaluating, like I know more about the ins and outs of those positions, usually because I either played them or I've watched them more. And some positions are easier to evaluate than others. Especially like when you're just watching like a normal game, because some of the stuff is more obvious that they're doing. But when I was younger, I used to play linebacker and anticipate, like being able to anticipate and quickly read and react is the most important thing for any linebacker. And you would say, well, that's important for every position. Sure. But the linebacker is in the heart of the defense, and they're having to, and in most cases, your top linebacker, your smartest linebacker, is the one making a lot of your defensive adjustments, defensive calls. And if you're playing in a 4-3, that middle linebacker has to be the rock in the middle of the defense. He has to keep things in front of him, and he has to keep things from getting around him. Like, he's got to be able to chase sideline to sideline. He's got to diagnose and be moving in the right direction at all times. And he can have a ton of different responsibilities on a given play, whether that's finding the right run fit, like run lane fit in run defense, or dropping into coverage and either checking down to the running back or carrying a receiver across the middle of the field on short to intermediate crossing routes, to having to try and defend a tight end flying up the seam, and potentially trading off between those two routes at a given moment. Those two, switching from defending the tight end to trading off to the receiver who's coming across. So, to be a really good linebacker in today's NFL, you have to be a great athlete and one of the smartest players on the field. That is hard. Which is why my number one linebacker, and linebackers are getting a little bit lighter right now because they don't need to be quite as big. I mean, it's good for them to be big if they can be fast and quick and agile, like like Devin Bush or Devin White. But my top linebacker is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah out of Notre Dame. Brett Kelman did an awesome video on him. I've talked about him a number of times. We actually line up with our number ones at several position groups. And we seem to look for some very similar things. There's definitely prospects we disagree on from listening to him and listening to his podcast, but we agree on having Joker as our top linebacker. He played at like 215 last year, I think. And I'm going to say that he probably plays in the 220s, like the 225 range in the pros. And that's fine, because this is what he can do I think he's plays at like 6'2". I think he's like 6'1", 6'2", 215 last year. The guy can destroy things in the run game. He is great at knifing through gaps, avoiding blocks, reading plays, and knowing where the ball is going to go. He is amazing at tracking the ball, and he's always around the ball. His ability to cover in space is also incredible. Like, this guy has top-level sideline-to-sideline speed at the position, the ability to slide laterally. This guy would... and I've mentioned it previously on the podcast, Notre Dame's defense was predicated around him doing, or basically wearing multiple hats in any given play call based on what he sees and what he reads. And he would constantly make the right decisions. So in the run game, he's setting the edge, he's knifing back there, he's getting into the backfield and forcing plays back inside. This guy will blow up your run game. He'll lock down your halfback, but then in coverage he basically plays as like their slot corner. So when teams would come out in like 3 wide receiver sets, they didn't leave their base defense. Instead, he morphed into their nickel corner, and he would guard the slot receiver. Against Alabama in the national championship game, he was regularly defending Devontae Smith and on a lot of plays, I don't want to say taking Devontae Smith out of the play, because sometimes Devontae Smith is sometimes just trying to take defenders out of place. But he's running with Devontae Smith. He is legitimately covering Devontae Smith. That's a linebacker on the best receiver in college football last year. Karamoah is a talented player. Now, I'm not saying this guy's going to be able to lock down, elite NFL wideouts or anything. It's not like this guy's going to lock down Tyreek Hill as a slot. But this guy gives you immense versatility. If he can cover, good college receivers or stay with, maybe not quite as good as a corner, but be as good, better than most. Okay, I'm back up. I don't know why I pay for the best internet I can get at my house when it still doesn't work. I'm gonna rerun some wires here when I'm moving to a different spot at my place, or I'm moving my setup somewhere different, and I'm gonna run some new cables and stuff. Hopefully that'll improve some of this. Because it's potentially that it's just that I'm, like right now, I'm having to run off wireless. But, that doesn't tend to disconnect me from Xbox too often, so I don't know. Anyway, let's talk about Joker. This dude can legit cover. He can cover running backs out of the backfield. He should be able to stick with speedy tight ends. He's athletic enough to deal with even bigger tight ends just because of his speed and explosiveness. He can cover some receivers. Like, this guy is going to be an all-around. This guy can do whatever you ask of him at the position. And he's more than a linebacker. This guy is a linebacker, safety, slot defender. So he's really more than a linebacker. There are some teams that apparently are looking at him as a safety. So, but I think, like, maybe he's a little light, but the dude showed plenty of strength playing the position. And you can probably put a little bit of good weight on his frame and him not lose speed or quickness. After that, number 2 is Micah Parsons. Man, after his pro day, I was really tempted to move him back up to number 1. He's not far off Karamoah, and I think Parsons will be drafted ahead of Karamoah. Because there's another part of my eval where I'm like, and Karamoah is a good blitzer, but like Parsons has elite get off. Like, the dude ran a 4.39 40, and I think he's like 242. And he's not quite as long as like Isaiah Simmons. Like, Isaiah Simmons a little slimmer than Parsons. I think Simmons came in under 240 last year when he ran his 4.39, and he was like 6'4", close to it. Parsons, I think, is like 6'2 and a half, 6'2 and a half, and he's like over 240, and he ran a 4.39 40, which is ridiculous. He's an amazing athlete. He's not as agile or fluid as Karamoah in coverage, though. And I don't think Parsons is a middle linebacker. I think Parsons is a strong side linebacker, and I think he'd be amazing, and I think he could be a 3-4 outside linebacker as well. And maybe if you have like a 3-4 with an elite pass rushing outside linebacker, you pair him on the opposite side where he can get after the quarterback. He has the athleticism, the build, and he has like pass rush production from college. But he could be a better cover version. but he has great coverage potential, and he was pretty. He made plays in coverage in college, so you put him across in a 3-4 situation like across from. I'm trying to think of like teams up top. So like with the Broncos, I know they have Bradley Chubb, but even then maybe you're looking at it as like a 4-3, but he's playing like a 4-3 strong side linebacker. You've got like Von Miller on one edge. You've got Bradley Chubb playing as like the defensive end on Parsons' side, and then Parsons is an outside linebacker. So maybe it's more like, I'm thinking more like the 49ers scheme under Salah, like the Robert Salah defense, the Pete Carroll defense, where they have like a pure like 4-3 pass rushing defensive end, but then you've got like maybe a smaller kind of penetrating rushing defensive tackle, like a traditional defensive tackle. You have a nose tackle, and you have like a 5-3 defensive end type, kind of like a Michael Bennett or whatever, or a Malik Jackson, and then you have like a kind of like a 3-4 outside linebacker type. I'm trying to remember what they call it. Not a rover. I'm trying to remember what they call that position. But Bruce Irvin played it for like the Seahawks. And I could see Parsons playing that role, I guess is the point. Because he has coverage ability and immense coverage upside. But it's like, and Parsons could potentially develop into like an elite middle linebacker. That wouldn't shock me in the slightest. I just think he's more of like a strong side guy. Like, you have him blitzing, getting after the passer, dropping the coverage, doing all sorts of things, kind of in the short to intermediate areas of the field. He's obviously has elite sideline to sideline speed as a run defender, and he's powerful. So he and Karamoa, I mean, at this point, it's like 1A, 1B. I think Karamoa right now is a more skilled and maybe a little more intelligent player, but Parsons' tools are incredible. Like, he is a game wrecker physically. Like, he has just game wrecking potential that, like, Karamoa is a disruptor. Parsons is a wrecker. Like, I would say, like, Karamoa is like Levante David, and Parsons is like Devin White. Although Karamoa is more athletic than White, or than David. So those are my top two. After that, I have Jamin Davis out of Kentucky as my linebacker 3. Dude's really athletic. He blew up Tennessee's offense a bunch during the Tennessee-Kentucky game. Like, he really stood out to me in that game. As a Tennessee fan, I watch every game, and like, that guy he owned us all day long in the run game, in the pass game. He had an interception in that game. He's got really great range. Shows really good coverage skills. He's athletic. He's really athletic. He's got a good build. He's not as big as Parsons, but he's closer to Parsons than he is to Karamoa in terms of build. I think he has a lot of upside, and he's well coached coming from Kentucky. I think he's a borderline, or I think he should probably go in the late first or early second for sure. But I would understand people taking him in the late first. I think he's a better prospect than Kenneth Murray, personally. And Kenneth Murray was the second middle linebacker taken, I think, last year. I think he went before Patrick Queen. Because Isaiah Simmons, of course, was the first one taken. But yeah. After that, you've got Nick Bolton. A lot of people have Nick Bolton as the number 3. I think some people crazily have him ahead of Karamoa, but a lot of people have him like late first round. He's really good. I just don't know if he is. I don't think he's as athletic as the three guys I have ahead of him, and I don't think he's that much more instinctive than any of those guys. Maybe slightly, but he's really good. And I think if he goes in the late first, I don't know if it's necessarily a bad pick, but I like him in the second round. I love him in this. I love Nick Bolton in the second round. He's a really good linebacker, tackles well. He's always around the ball. I know that's a little bit of a cliche, but he just. It's not that he's just running the football. He's there in anticipation of the ball. Like he's a really good coverage player. Like he's going to be a solid, or I mean, I say a solid. He's going to be an above average middle linebacker in the league, and I think that's really good. Or, that's solid second round value. After that, for some people, it gets a little bit murky. Actually, you know what? I missed one because I had him listed as a 3, or for a bit I had him as more of like an edge player, but he's kind of like a discount Micah Parsons in a lot of ways. Zaven Collins out of Tulsa, he's my number 4 linebacker. He and Davis are right there with each other. Collins has like edge potential, like he's a big backer. Because I want to say he played at over 250 last year at Tulsa, maybe even at 260. And I might be wrong. I know he was over 240. I think he was over 250. He's 6'4", and he's athletic. He's great in coverage. He had like I think 4.5 sacks last year, 4 interceptions, double-digit tackles for loss. Outstanding player. An all-around linebacker. Once again, a guy who I feel like could play in multiple schemes. I think he'd be perfect for the Browns for what they want to do and should be available around their first-round pick. So, Zaven Collins is my number 4, and then Bolton is my number 5, because I think Collins should go in the late first round. He and Davis, like I said, are basically around the same. It's like if Caramel and Parsons are like 1A, 1B, then you've got Davis and Collins is like 3A, 3B. So then Bolton at 5. After this is like there's a little bit of a drop off, although I don't know. It depends on who you ask. Like number 6 for me is Jabril Cox out of LSU. He played most of his college ball at North Dakota State. Then he transferred last year as, I think, a graduate transfer to LSU. This guy won FCS titles and now and joined the LSU defense. And beginning of the year against Mississippi State, he had a really, really nice interception on KJ Costello in that game. I believe he returned for a touchdown. I think it was a pick 6. But Cox is a really instinctive player. He's athletic. And he's smart. This is a championship level player who was the heart and soul of North Dakota State's defense. Guy plays really well sideline to sideline. He gets out in, it's like he can set the edge. I think he could play just about any linebacker spot. Like any off-ball spot in the 4-3. So, like he could be an inside backer in a 3-4. He could be the middle, weak, or strong side linebacker in a 4-3. Although he wouldn't have as much pass press potential as some other guys as like a strong side 4-3 backer, but he's quick, really instinctive. Like, there were some plays last year where he'd like just shoot gaps in the run game. Like, he's really good at finding spaces, like reading the offense and getting into taking the best angles to the ball possible. And like I said, I like him in coverage. Like, he's really good in like underneath zone. Number 7 would be, and I think I might be a little higher on him than some other people, but I'm a big fan of Monty Rice from Georgia. This guy he's incredibly tough. He's a really good leader. Like, once again, he was the heart and soul of Georgia's defense. Coaches rave about him. He called Georgia's defense on the field. Out of the guys I've talked about so far, he's probably the least athletic. Not that he's not athletic, but he's more of a heady player. He has some coverage limitations, but that's really in comparison to like just elite athletes at his position. He's fine when it comes to his athleticism at the position. So I like Monty Rice. So you get down into kind of like your guys who are like third, fourth rounds, and it's like you start like kind of splitting hairs or having to split hairs. Like, what do you prefer, potential or production? The guy who has the mental game down already, or the guy who, if he gets the mental game down, his athleticism and his traits are going to far surpass the other guy. And that's a tough balance to strike sometimes. Hold up, I'm sorry. I need to answer this message real quick. But yeah, Rice I keep using this term instinctive in referring to him, or in referring to these guys, or a lot of these guys. I'm using a lot of buzzwords, but Parsons doesn't show as much instinctiveness as the other guys on this list. Like, he's a great athlete and he makes plays, but he's not always anticipating making plays on tape. Although, he set out this year, so his mental game might have caught up from doing a lot of film work, but or himself or whatever. But we haven't gotten to see that yet. So yeah. Okay. Which it's like, I try to memorize this stuff so I don't have to read it off for you guys when I'm having to look up, or go down through my rankings real quick, and then for whatever reason my my spreadsheet is like not loading properly because my phone is messing up. So if y'all will bear with me. Okay, it's not pulling up on my phone. I'm gonna have to pull it up on my iPad. But anyway, if you've got if you have questions or anything, drop them in the chat, please. Because honestly, I'd rather like conversate and answer questions than like go or than try and keep or coming up with segments or whatever. Like, I like the interaction, and eventually, I'm gonna make it to where I'm gonna have call-ins. It's gonna take some time, but it's coming. But I've got to do some upgrading to my tech and learn some software type stuff. Okay, let's see. Let's see if it loads properly this time on my iPad. Man, this is just great content, I'm sure. I'm sitting here just trying to vamp while things load, then they don't load. Okay. So here we are with my linebackers list. Actually, you know what? I knew I skipped someone. So behind Cox, but ahead of Rice, I had Dylan Moses as my number 7. Because Moses is more athletic than Rice. He's still coming back from that knee injury that took him out of the 2019 season, and instead of declaring for the draft, he decided to come back and play. He seemed a little less mobile, a little less agile. I think he'll be fine with another year removed from the injury, and with this year or this offseason, like where he is focused on getting himself back to his best, like athletically, training and whatnot. I still believe in Moses as a talent, but he's probably a 3rd round pick at this stage rather than where he was like a first round or a late first before the injury. After that, so with Rice at 8, because these are like off-ball guys, I'd probably put Pete Werner of Ohio State at 9, and then at 10, it's either McGorn of Michigan or Tony Fields of West Virginia, and I think I'm going to go Tony Fields on that one. Which there's a lot of people who aren't as high on Monty Rice as I am. A lot of people have him like, I know Kuiper has him as like his 10th rated inside linebacker, which most of his like outside linebackers tend to be like pass rusher types. Now Warner's more of a traditional like outside linebacker rather than an edge, but he's got him listed out as an edge. Or not an edge, but with his outside linebackers. But I think Rice is really good. I know I know Kuiper and I believe McShay as well have like Warner, McGorn, Fields, KJ Britt at Auburn. KJ Britt's another good one. And a couple other guys rated ahead of Rice. But I really like him. Maybe I have a little SEC bias, but it's like I like KJ Britt, but I don't have him in my top 10 because I have Warner and Fields ahead of him, and McGorn of Michigan. But I will say this as well about my rankings. Like I had Rice higher coming into the year, but he does have some athletic, like compared to some of these other guys, he's not as athletic, and that makes him like in the pros a potential coverage liability in comparison. But we'll see, because I think his head for the game and anticipation, like his ability to kind of to read the offense and kind of predict, read again, react, is going to be, or is better than some of these other guys. But maybe that's me taking a right now approach to this rather than a long-term projection kind of approach to this process. So, that being said, that's my linebackers. And that's where I'm going to wrap up today's show. Thanks to everybody who's tuned in today. Thanks for everybody who's listening after the fact on the archive. Appreciate you. If you would, if you hit the like button, if you like the video, subscribe. If you want to keep up, on the channel, hit the subscribe button. Hit that bell next to the subscribe button. Set the notifications to all so you get a notification every time I go live, and if I end up posting videos. And please, if you're checking this out after the fact or watched it live, leave a comment down in the comments below this, like the archive video. Tell me what you want to see from the channel, like what you want me to talk more about. Give me some pointers on what'll help you keep interested. That'd be great. I appreciate it, because I'm learning on the job here. So, and for the most part, it's about giving the audience what they want. So, I appreciate you guys. Like I said, like, subscribe, and have a really, really blessed day.